University of Maryland Law School was walking distance from home. They didn't accept colored, so I had to go to Howard. An hour and a half each way by bus and well known as a school for failures.
That's too bad.
No, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. They just brought in a new dean, Charles Hamilton Houston. Turned that place around, taught me everything I know, including how to sue the University of Maryland.
You sued them?
You bet your ass I did. As soon as I passed the bar.
And?
Supreme Court ordered the bastards to integrate.
You argued in the United States Supreme Court?
What? No, the Maryland Supreme Court. I didn't argue in front of the U.S. Supreme Court until last year.
Why did you decide to make this film set in 1941 about Thurgood Marshall?
Well, because you don't know what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully you've learned about Brown versus Board of Education in 5th grade. You know, never know today. But yeah, I mean, this is a case because you don't know the outcome. You don't know if he's innocent or guilty. You don't know if the jury cares if he's innocent or guilty. So now you have the setting of a real thriller. And I believe in genre. You know, I think it keeps you from excess. It keeps you making sure that the audience is going to be fully engaged.
Paula, how did this, you know, I know that there's a long story about how this came to fruition. Can you give us a sense of how you first got involved with this film?
Through a friend from college. One of those calls, my friend called me up and said, I have a script about my father, Sam Friedman, and Justice Thurgood Marshall. And I read it, and I couldn't put it down. This was 5 years ago. Because in answer a bit to your first question, in addition to what Reggie said, this case was like the intersection between racism and anti-Semitism in 1940-41, right before World War II broke out, literally 9 months before World War II, when it was assumed that the East, the Northeast, was free of racism and free of anti-Semitism, and it was all buried under the surface. And through this case, it actually brought something to the surface, and it was a gateway for Thurgood Marshall to what he did through the NAACP as a young lawyer in creating the Legal Defense Fund, which in a way was a gateway to the civil rights movement.
How did you find Thurgood Marshall's voice in this role?
Well, what I loved about the script when I read it is it didn't feel like I had to know who Thurgood Marshall was in order to enjoy the story, in order to enjoy the script or the film that we created. And, you know, for me, it was a thing of once I saw that, I was like, now I have a certain amount of freedom to just explore who was he in this time period. What was the music of the time? What was the social construct of the time?
And Thurgood Marshall was a man who liked to have a good time.
He liked to have a good time. And, you know, I could just explore. He went to this school. He was in Harlem. These were his friends. He was sort of a practical joker. So all of those the way that he walked through this space, I think the audacity of being able to walk in spaces that were dangerous. You know, you're asking the question, how does this man not get killed? You know, he's in the North in this particular instance, but you also see him in the South. You see the threats in the South. You see him return to the South at the end of the movie. And so he walked in those spaces with sort of the same confidence and swagger and what allows a person to do that. So that was my exploration of sort of who he was.
There's a very interesting story about how this song came together, and it literally was on a plane.
Yeah, it's weird because Andra Day, when I was thinking of her for the song, I didn't realize she was in the movie yet. You know, and the demo was in the movie, and then watching it, it's like, wait, Andra's in the movie? And then Common happened to be sitting next to me or behind me on the plane on the way to Sundance. I was like, hey, I have this song you might want to hear. And he loved it and added such a great part to it.
There's a weaving in of a greater sense of Black America culture here. We, of course, have Langston Hughes appears. Zora is in the film. You know, I wanted to get a sense of, for you guys, you know, really putting that tapestry together. Why was that important for you in the way you told this story?
Well, it's very important because you have to understand that Thurgood Marshall's making a choice. You know, very often you see characters who are doing, risking their lives, but their backs are against the wall. The fact is, Thurgood Marshall went to college with Langston Hughes and Cab Calloway. He's a successful lawyer living in Harlem, which at the time of the Harlem Renaissance was kind of as close to a Black utopia as it's going to get. And so, yeah, he could spend his life with his beautiful wife and his fabulous friends, but instead he leaves that, gets on a train, and literally goes to hell. He goes to Alabama, he goes to Mississippi, he goes to Oklahoma, places where they will kill him after dark. The movie and the setting is a challenge to all of us in our lives. You know, we all could be Thurgood Marshall. We could be Sam Friedman. We could all make a choice to stand up against injustice however and whenever we see it.